We're going to call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. We will start with our consent agenda. Do we have a motion? Mrs. Bush.
I move to accept the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Mr. Kemp. Are there any items that need to be pulled? Mrs. Arndt.
I'd like to request to pull item D, I, S, and HH.
Are there any others? Anyone else? I would like to pull W and Y. Okay, for the rest of the items on the consent agenda, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, Mrs. Arndt.
Item D has to do with the Carl Perkins grant, and I thought that there was a lot of information in there. I'm not suggesting that we don't vote on it, I'm simply requesting that perhaps Mr. Burke could do a presentation when we return. I thought there was, it appeared to me to be enough information that maybe we should be educated about it.
Do you want to make a motion to approve that agenda item?
Well, I'd like to know if it needs to be approved this evening, if it's something that has to happen this evening.
I do believe it needs to go in, yes. Like so. Mr. Chair would be very happy to provide information on the Perkins. We get one every year.
Right, it would have to be in August. If we want to get the funds for next year, I think we would have to get things going with them.
Could I suggest in the form of a motion that we approve the grant application as presented, and we have a formal review of it at our next meeting with Mr. Burke?
Is there a second on that? Mr. Kemp? Any further discussion, comments? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Mrs. Arndt, aye.
I has to do with requisitions for goods and services, and it's not new language that says competitive bidding shall be required for all purchases of materials, equipment, and service contracts exceeding $10,000. It says that the superintendent may request the board to waive bidding requirements if it's in the best interest of the school system to do so. I've yet to get, I'd like to know how the contract with Futures came to be, if this is the language of our bidding process.
All right, well, that is a separate issue from approving the policy.
Prepare that for next meeting.
We can have that on our agenda for our August.
I move to approve policy 3321.
Is there a second? Mrs. Bush?
Second.
All those in favor? It's unanimous, thank you. Item S?
It's just a typo in 3. Recover and restore to usefulness any school
Yeah.
document, that's all.
Want to make a motion to approve with the correction?
Move to approve policy 3510 with the correction.
Is there a second?
I did share with Trish some of the typos.
Oh, okay,
Policies. Mr. Linton. Okay, item W. Is that mine or yours, Mrs. Hunter? That was mine, I'm sorry. That was on the, let's find this one. On the second page, last paragraph, it should say the Vernon School System operates a state and federal aided national school lunch program. It's just missing 2 words. Mr. Wool,
Motion to approve as amended.
is there a second? Mrs. Bush?
Second.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, and item Y, also mine. On the very last paragraph, there should be two sentences added. It should say, negative balance letters or emails will be sent home bi-weekly to any student owing $10 or more. Snack and a la carte purchases are cash only. Mr. Bull?
Motion to also approve as amended.
Is there a second? Mr. Linton? Any questions or comments? All in favor? Unanimous. Okay, HH, Mrs. Ryan?
Just if you already did the typos, then okay. And I do have a question about the first sentence. I didn't think it read correctly. It is the responsibility to arrange. Should it be, it is the superintendent's responsibility, or it is something, I know the paragraph is identified, but the sentence doesn't make sense.
Back up, I did.
Okay. 3541.3.
Papers all over here. Okay, yeah, the superintendent should be added in there.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Move to approve with the addition of the superintendent.
Is there a second? Mrs. Bush?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor? It's unanimous. We'll move on to item 2.0, Secretary's Report. Opportunity for the board to add or delete agenda items. Mrs. Bush?
Yes, I'd like to delete item 5.3.
Is there a second on that? Mr. Gould?
5.3. Second.
Any questions, comments, or discussion? Mrs. Arnold?
Why?
Because it is not a policy that is in our packet, it's just an agreement that the actual policy that was written by the policy committee is not in here. So we're going to have to share that with the board at our next meeting as a first reading. Okay, any other questions or comments on that? All in favor? It's unanimous. Any additions? Or deletions? Any further additions or deletions to the agenda tonight? Mrs. Warren?
It was emailed to us, and then in tonight's packet, I'm assuming that we need to add the agenda item to discuss the athletic director position.
I'd like to suggest adding it.
I'm going to suggest that we add it at 5.0. It appears we have an interested audience. It didn't seem right to tie them up for the email.
Is there a second on that? Mr. Wool?
I guess second on that motion.
Okay, any discussion or questions, comments? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. So that's going to be 5.0. Two other possible agenda additions. Mr. Wool?
Motion to add, I'm not sure what item number, probably under general business, the donation from travelers and employee giving matching gift program. I'm not sure what we want to make that.
How about we make it 5.2A.
5.2A is the motion.
Is there a second on that? Mr. Linton? Any questions or comments on that? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. There's one more. Anyone? Mrs. Bush?
I'd like to add the donation from the marching band. Might as well make it 5.2B.
Okay. Second on that motion, Mr. Linton?
Just for clarification, it's the Marching Band Booster Club,
Booster.
not just
Sorry.
because we're a good band.
Okay, any questions or comments on that addition? All those in favor? It's unanimous, thank you. Okay, any other additions or deletions? Yes. Okay, we do not have our Rockville High representatives, they're enjoying their summer vacation. We'll move on to item 3.0, Community Forum. It's an opportunity for comments on agenda items, potential future agenda items, or general information provided to the board from citizens and community organizations. Is there anyone who would like to address the board this evening? Please come forward, state your name and address, please, and sign in.
Good evening. My name is Sarah King, 1238 Hartford Turnpike, number 48 Vernon. I'm a parent of a current Rockville High School student athlete. He has played 5 sports over the last 3 years. I'm speaking in relation to the agenda item regarding the full-time athletic director. On behalf of a large group of parents, we want to extend our thanks to the board to open up the dialogue and discuss this issue. The Vernon School District has been operating under a .5 athletic director for quite some time. Failing sports programs, low enrollment, low return rates, as well as numerous other issues within the district's athletic programs have been identified over the last few years. Within that period, there's been a collective effort to open dialogue between parents, Rockville High School administration, the Board of Education, and the Town Council in an effort to address many of these ongoing issues. A .5 AD position is not adequate to revitalize, to grow, and to sustain athletics in an entire school district. In addition to an overwhelming amount of specific and recurring issues that remain outstanding, I will also note that the 2009 CIAC Rockville High School Athletic Program Evaluation identified numerous deficiencies in our programs, most of which have not been addressed. I will note that parents are committed to supporting the transition into a full-time AD. We respectfully request that the Board of Education add the full-time AD position to the agenda for the next Board of Ed meeting for further discussion. Specific information and documentation can and will be provided upon request. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board this evening? Okay, I will close community forum then. And we will move on to, thank you very much, Mrs. King, to item 4.0, curriculum, spring assessment day. Dr. Kine.
Thank you very much. I call your attention to a line graph that should have been in your folders this evening, which is really the summary of all the sheets that you did receive. Should be right in your folder. The yellow folders. That one. That's it. Thank you. What you have in your packet are the end-of-year assessments for Fountas and Pinnell, which is a reading assessment, and for also our benchmark assessments, and I think the writing should be in there as well. Yes, and the writing. So those were all goals that we held out for all of our students. To highlight the reading, and I'm just highlighting kindergarten, If you would look at that graph, you'll find it very, very interesting to look at that graph. You can see that we were clustered with a gap of about 21 percentage points between our highest achieving and our lowest achieving schools 4 years ago. Interestingly, the gap has widened. It's now 31 percentage points instead of 21 percentage points. We don't know why, but we're certainly curious. However, the achievement in all 5 schools, and of course the district overall, has increased quite a bit. We actually, as an administrative team, went very deep into this data this morning, looking at it, going to the teacher level, and finding that while you can see that Maple Street School has the highest kindergarten achievement, they had a different theory of action this year. They attacked reading a little bit differently with their reading specialists and their teachers partnering. And so you can see that altogether they have over 90% of their children reading at or above grade level. So remember that you have 3 bar graphs there that you had. The first one is below, the second one is at, and the third one is above. So at or above grade level are the 2 on the right, the 2 bars on the right. So, but interestingly enough, in looking at the Maple Street data this morning, we find that one teacher had 100% of her students at or above grade level, and one teacher had about 84%, and the other teacher had about 66%. And so obviously the same thing is not going on in all the classrooms. So that tells us a lot. They plan together every day. So I'm just giving you this as an example. These are the way we were digging into the data today. They plan together every single day. They use the same assessments, but obviously something different is going on. And so that's our next step with these teachers, is to make sure that they are in each other's classrooms, that they are observing each other, and they are sharing actual strategies for improvement. And that's what we want at all grade levels. But I thought you would find this interesting. Remember, in this graph, the first 3 years, we assess students at their instructional level. So if you were learning to read a level D text, then that's where you would be scored at goal, would be at level D, if that's what you scored on the assessment. We're now looking at their independent level. So they have to be able to read these texts. If they were an independent level D, then they would be learning on an E or an F in terms of this. So the bar went up considerably. So even though the bar went up considerably, so did the student achievement. So we're quite pleased with that. A couple of the schools went down overall over 4 years that they've been working and we've been collecting data. They've certainly gone up. But so I just wanted to give you that as an overview. And if there are questions about any of the other data, I will try to answer those questions. Oh, remember the benchmarks for mathematics are, they're individual, so you can't compare. They're testing different things. Each benchmark tests a different set of skills and knowledge. And so even though mathematics is certainly built upon one another, they're testing the new skills and knowledge for each one. So in mathematics, you really can't look across and expect them to just continuously improve each time as you can in reading or in writing. Writing you could as well. Across the district, we were disappointed in writing. The district, having no baseline last year, chose 80% as a goal. We did not hit that in any school at any grade level. And that was a goal all the way up for, we did not hit, we did, and you're right, in grade 4, I'm sorry. That is correct. But most principals were very disappointed in terms of the writing scores, and that will certainly be repeated next year. Those goals.
Mrs. Bush, I'm sorry.
Yes, in the elementary level, you were using the writer's workshop. Is each trimester evaluated on a different genre of writing? Or is it just a writing like prompt or something that you give? Because I know for writer's workshop, we do different genres of writing.
You do, and in most cases that's correct. They have been doing a different genre each time that they're doing a piece. It's not a prompt writing. They don't do prompt writing. One of the things we did discover, however, was that teachers at different grade levels were processing in a different way. Some were giving lots of feedback to students and some were not giving as much when it was the assessment that they were really looking at to measure. Some were using it as a teaching tool, others were using it as more of an assessment. So we have to be consistent across the board, and we weren't. So this was the first year to collect this data, and there's much room for improvement in terms of that data.
Are there any other questions? Thank you very much. It's great to see how kindergarten soared. That was great.
Really
Obviously,
believe all day
full-day
kindergarten has
kindergarten
made the world of difference.
Okay, we'll move on to item 5.2, no, excuse me, 4.2, iPads from Global Ed 2.
Thank you. This is a donation that we're asking the board to accept worth approximately $9,000, but also to allow Vernon Center Middle School grades 7 and 8 to be involved in this program. So the teachers, the 6 social studies teachers are very interested in the program. We've provided you with an overview here, and it's run through the University of Connecticut. They're the overseers.
Mr. Walker?
I'd like to make the motion the board approves the 30 Global Ed 2 iPads for the Vernon Center Middle School, which is valued at about $9,000.
Mrs. Bush? Second.
Second.
Mr. Holt?
Just wanted to, there is a summer training program that is all funded by the Global Ed.
Correct.
Is that true?
That's right.
Any other questions? Mrs. August?
There was mention of curriculum. I'm just wondering if that curriculum will align with the state standards.
Yes, they would not have asked, that's a great question, but they worked very closely with Mr. Burt as well as Mr. Gussie to make sure that it was fully aligned, because they don't do an extra. It's what they were supposed to do.
And there's mention of providing teachers with a considerable stipend for their participation.
I believe that the stipend would cover their work in the summer, where they're learning how to use the program.
So it's not to the teacher, it's supporting the summer workshop?
But it would pay them to go to the workshop. That's my understanding. We give our teachers stipends when they attend workshops and work
Right.
for us in the summer.
Right, so the cost of the workshop, including paying the teachers, will be covered by Global Ed
Global
too.
Ed too.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
Do the devices stay in this school? What's the?
That's our understanding, is that once they're ours, they're ours.
Okay.
Okay, any other concerns or questions? Okay, all those in favor of accepting this? It's unanimous, thank you. Okay, now move on to general business, 5.1, no, excuse me, 1.0, 5.0. The 1.0 athletic director discussion. Tony?
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. I was approached a few days ago and asked if the board would consider having a discussion about increasing our .5 athletic director to a full-time athletic director, should the funds become available. And so I don't know that the funds will become available or their exact origin, but if the funds become available, I thought it was very unfair for the board to hear about this in a special meeting in the middle of the summer. And so even though we don't know, and we wouldn't be voting to actually accept the funds now because they don't exist, I thought it was prudent that we add this to the agenda so that you could have that discussion to see if that's a direction that you wish to go.
So, this would be a donation of funds.
That's my understanding, is this would be a donation to the board.
Mrs. Ard?
not enough information. History has proven that a half-time AD doesn't work. It's not the person, it's the position. We haven't funded enough time to make the AD successful. I don't know. We can discuss the things that haven't worked, but I prefer to discuss the proposal for what will make it work. And if you allude to a gift from someplace to support a full-time AD, I don't know what else we need that information in order to have a discussion. That's news to me. What do you expect us to talk about?
Whether that's where you would, if you were given those funds from whatever origin, would you want to make that a full-time position? The board cut a half-time special ed administrator, reduce a math teacher, a tech ed teacher from the high school. There was a math interventionist at the elementary school that was requested. So there were a lot of other eggs. I think that's, my understanding is that would certainly be part of your discussion, but I have no certainty as to exactly where the funding will come from.
I would be very reluctant to support a position on donated funds because those funds can go away
Correct.
at any given time. I'd be more interested in learning if the board wants to support a full-time position, if they see the importance of it, then I would be asking, what's the give back then? What is the trade-off? Because we don't have the dollars for it, so what's the trade-off for the funding that would be needed to make that a full-time position?
I'd also like to clarify. I was under the impression that we had a stipended position this year and that we added it to be a .5.
That's correct, Mr. Hull, I'm sorry.
Okay, so it was a stipend.
It was a stipend, correct. The person who was doing it had a full-time job as a special ed supervisor and did this after hours, basically.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that because I
Right.
heard someone say that it
We've
was
had a part-time athletic
.5.
director for years and years and years, and this past year it was not, there was really, it was supposed to be a .4 teacher position, and that did not materialize, so it was a stipended position after hours.
Do you recall what we added for the halftime, for the .5, what that was for a budget item?
The funding, I would just guess about $65,000.
It would be a second 65 to fund another half. And what would a full-time position be?
Probably about 125, so.
Personally,
As an administrator.
yeah, personally, my opinion is that when we negotiated this during our budget time, we didn't feel that there was enough money in the basket to fund a full-time, and we had to make other cuts. And so my position is I would stand on that position, is that, you know, there are other priorities that I would look to fund before funding another half-time if this is Board of Education monies. And short of receiving a gift, I don't see a gift as something that I would want to fund a position with. If we're going to fund it, just like we did full-day kindergarten, we fund it. We don't accept a gift to do that. But that's my opinion, so.
Mr. Kent.
I heard the superintendent say that the funds might come from, first she said a donation and then from whatever origin. So I'd like to clarify, where might these funds be coming from?
I don't know. I mean, I know there's been discussion from the town, but I'm not sure if that's something that would ever happen.
Did you say from the town?
Mhm.
All right, that's not a donation. I'm just trying to understand what's being placed on the table here. There's a donation's one thing. Town funding is another one. But that being said, my next question has to do with the duration of this funding, be it a donation or town support or whatever. What are the person's intentions beyond the forthcoming fiscal year?
I do not know. I would think we would have to add it into our budget to maintain that position for the future year. That would be my suggestion.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, this donation would be a one-year donation, and that the expectation would not be that they continue making that donation, it would become part of the board responsibility from that second year forward.
I'm not sure of that, I'm just saying that's what I would suggest, that we would fund it fully after that if we found it to be successful.
Well, I haven't heard a proposal that it be 1 year or 2 years or any years.
Neither have I.
I don't know a lot, really. All right.
Mrs. R.
Back to my original question, I don't understand why we're talking about this then if we're not being provided the information we need to talk about. There had to have been meetings or something that took place to bring it as an agenda item for the board to discuss, but you want us to discuss philosophically, would we agree, but we still don't know what we're agreeing to or not agreeing to or talking about. Is there information that we don't have that we ought to have?
I think the bottom line is we need to decide if we think we need a 1.0 athletic director, or if we think a 0.5 is sufficient, and if we would put any money towards that as opposed to other places that we had made cuts.
Well, wouldn't we need to hear from Dr. Purcell and Mr. Rocket and other people involved in this? There's no information shared with us. My question to Mr. Rocket would be, if he supports a 1.0 athletic director, then what does he give up in order to achieve that? There must be, if that's a priority for him, then I would need to know it's important enough for him to give up something else, but we don't have the dollars, and to talk about this gift from somewhere makes no sense to me.
Well, I know during budget hearings, we did ask Mr. Rocket if he felt 0.5 was sufficient, even with cutting half of the secretary, and he believed it was.
Then why are we having this discussion? I don't understand.
Because it was brought forward and asked for us to put it on the agenda.
Who did that?
Parents.
So you've had meetings and you think that this is the way for the board to go?
I'm not saying that, I wanted the board to discuss that, to decide what they think is the way to go. And the funds may never come through, and it's a moot point, but if the funds did come through, if the town or anyone were able to provide the funds, they wanted to know if we'd be even interested in accepting the funds before they pursue that. And if we're not,
I don't know if it's the cart before the horse or not. We need to decide if we need more than a half-time AD, and
that's what I
without
said.
funding at all, we need to determine if that's important, if that's an important position to find funding for. Never mind a gift, we don't do it because we get a gift, we do it because it's the right thing to do. And there's nobody here to give us that information.
I did speak with both Dr. Purcell and Mr. Rocket this afternoon, as a matter of fact, and they both felt the 0.5 was adequate.
Then why is there such a disparity between what they think and what the parents in the program think? Have you had those discussions? You haven't. You've not met with the parents.
We meet every Wednesday night, the parents meet with Dr. Purcell and Mr. Rocket.
But you haven't met to discuss the AD.
There was a parent meeting, yes, with, there were lots of parents. There was Mr. Rocket, Dr. Conway, myself, and Dr. Purcell. And the parents did share with us many things that they were, didn't go well or that they were unhappy with.
Were those surprises to Dr. Purcell and Mr. Rocket?
I don't know.
Their concerns?
They didn't say one way or the other whether they were surprises. They've been meeting right along, so I doubt the concerns were surprises.
So there have been ongoing, I'm sorry, am I confused?
Go ahead, sure.
Well, just
So there have been ongoing concerns that haven't been addressed because they're ongoing. Yet we haven't heard about them until the parents are concerned.
Dr. Purcell and Mr. Rocket have been working very hard this year to improve the athletic department. They've been doing incredible yeoman's work, both of them, especially Dr. Purcell, to change, to fix things that shouldn't be being done the way they were being done. the way we've always been doing things and to straighten things out. Done incredible work that it's all behind the scenes work that no one ever sees.
I'm not in any way being critical of Dr. Pacell. My question is the position, the time that the board chose to fund, not Dr. Pacell's work. She's limited by what the board is willing to invest in.
And Mr. Rocket had asked the board to fund a half-time athletic director because he knew how much work was being done. And if Dr. Pacell had more time, then she could do even more work and devote more time to it. And so he did ask for that in the budget. The board did support that and put that in the budget. And so both Dr. Pacell and Mr. Rocket are very satisfied with that. The parent group has not been satisfied with that and wanted more because they would like that area of our system to move more quickly towards improvement.
Mr. Rocket told us that he was going to hang some of his efforts on sports as a way to move students forward and engage them more and improve at Rockville High School and all. So he told us that during our budget deliberations, and he said that he thought halftime was fine. Maybe what would be helpful to me, I don't know, to other board members, I'd like to know what other towns do. What do they fund? The size of their high school, the size of their sports participation. What does it take to make it work well in other towns where it works well? Because we don't have any information to discuss. So if this comes back to a future board meeting, and I would say it needs to come back at our next board meeting, then we need information to discuss. I think Mr. Rocket should be here. Town comparisons, numbers. Parents should certainly be involved. Dr. Pacell, we need to hear more than nothing in order to discuss the topic, I believe.
Well, we can definitely add it to our August agenda. And that will give us time.
And you'll collect as much relative pertinent information as you can.
Mr. Wolf?
Actually, Mr. Kemp had his
Mr.
hand
Kemp, I'm
first.
sorry.
He has a special item first.
Well, way back then, it was a fine point really, but I clarified with you that it's a stipend position currently, correct? So therefore, that person already, that person's benefit package is already absorbed into our budget. If we went to a 1.0, let's say, or any other fraction for that matter, that would necessitate probably a different person from the one. Possibly, and if so, that would not just be the salary associated with 1.0, but there might be incremental costs that go along with the benefit package. I'm not sure what the donor's intent is, because if the donor's intent is to fund not only the salary piece, the contemplation of the benefit package and any other associated costs should be clearly laid out in the first place, so that there isn't any false expectation as to what's being funded and what's not. And once again, I'll just come back to, I'm not sure whether this is town or donor or what. I mean, this is so vague. And the continuation into a subsequent fiscal year is very much in question. I would not necessarily say that it's the board's position that we would then fund it even if it did get to be a 1.0. I mean, that's quite a leap of faith. That's enough of that.
Mr. Wolf?
I still come back to, you suggest that we do comparisons of other towns. Why are we stopping at athletic director? We should compare our whole budget if that's what you're talking about. We went through a budget process. We listened to the principal. He wasn't happy about losing a technology person. He wasn't happy about losing secretarial staff. He wasn't happy about losing math positions. He said very clearly at that meeting that a 0.5 would be helpful to them. He wanted initially a full position, I think, but he said they would do with the 0.5 because of the other administrative cuts that we're being requested to make. I don't understand why we're even talking about this again at this point in time. This is a budget item that we talked about at length in January and in February, and that's water over the dam. If we have a problem, we should investigate the problem and fix the problem. And if people have information about a problem, it should be clearly articulated. We don't have anything but, information saying, we think this, we think that, there may be a donation, there may be problems, but if there's nothing clearly articulated what the problem is, what are we trying to solve here? And why putting it on the August agenda is it going to make a difference? We need, better information to work off of than, what we're talking about here tonight. And like I say, I don't support opening up our budget again because we don't have any new mysterious monies that come into our budget mid-year. Yeah, this is something that we have to deal with at the beginning of the year, and if people want to pass a budget, people have to get out and support a budget with the higher cost in it. We were told to cut administrators this year, and the AD position is an administrative position. So be it.
Mrs. Arndt?
Nobody mentioned opening the budget. I think that our budget is a moving representation of what we're doing. And if something changes, then I think we're obligated to pay attention to the change, that's all. And Mr. Hull, I couldn't agree with you more. I was asking for something. If there is a problem or an issue that we need to address, then that's what I was asking for, was information, not just hearsay, but information. So I'm not suggesting at the August meeting that we're opening the budget and making changes. I'm suggesting if this is legitimate, then we need information to support it, and we do need to talk about it. Talking doesn't mean that we change our budget. Talking means we address an issue that's come before us. That's all. With information, though, not hearsay.
Anyone else? Mrs. Arndt?
I'm going to put that in the form of a motion, please, that at the August meeting, there will be an agenda item with supporting information to discuss the athletic director position.
Is there a second? All right, there's no second, so there's.
So does that mean it's not a discussion item?
I guess not, if it's not going to be on the agenda.
Wow. Are you kidding me? We're just going to ignore all these people and their concerns. Wow.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's not, obviously it's not going to be on the August agenda because there was no vote on that, but it is certainly something that we should be discussing when the budget comes around.
Shame on us. Before we leave the agenda item, I'd just like to point out that we make this one of our goals to be responsive to the community. And I think that this is a perfect example of how we don't respond to the community. And it doesn't mean doing everything that we... Point of order what?
You've had your 2 times at least.
Mr. Kemp?
By not approving your motion does not necessarily mean we don't take their issues seriously. So the interpretation was that we didn't, and then you actually went to the trouble of saying that we didn't. And I happen to resent that, because we take it very seriously, Michelle, but we're not doing it in necessarily their time frame or yours. And that's all there is to it. So you can draw the conclusions that you want, but I think they're mistaken. And I really don't appreciate you playing to the crowd like that while it was still here. Yes, you were.
I was not.
Oh, certainly you were.
All right, we're going to move on to item 5.1, Truancy Council report.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Mr. William Biliak is here. He is our Truancy Residency Counselor to provide you with our year-end report. Thank you, Mr. Biliak.
Thank you, Dr. Conway. Good evening, everybody. I'm happy to report now that we're in our 2nd year of our new attendance policy that the data is looking really good. Attendance, I hope I can show you in some of these slides in the packet that hopefully you have in front of you, that attendance has improved in all of our schools, K through 12. I'll be brief with the slides. This presentation is usually given at a state level, and I'll just kind of brief through some highlights of it. But please, if you have any questions on any of the points, please stop me and I'll answer wherever I can. One of the things that we are doing and continue to do is to work on state and national initiatives. And one of the organizations that we partner with is Attendance Works. And what they do, this national level organization addresses chronic absenteeism, which is defined as 18 or more absences, no matter what the excuse. So in Vernon, not only do we address truancy, but in all of our schools we address the chronic absenteeism problem. And the reason why I point this out is data shows us that kids that are chronically absent, they have academic issues and also possible dropout issues when they reach high school. So we try to reach the younger kids and spend a lot of time K through 8 working on these issues with the parents. A lot of buzz in the attendance world at the state legislation. Vernon is always invited down there to speak on attendance issues, what Vernon is doing. Dr. Conway even gave a national level webinar with Attendance Works, speaking to other superintendents and board members across the nation on what is working in Vernon. So we're getting a lot of recognition on our attendance policies here. One of the things that we really concentrate on is addressing and monitoring attendance on a weekly basis. It's not like we do it once a year or just twice a year, but we're constantly reviewing our data. As soon as children are reaching certain levels of absences, we are reacting to it, actually proactively reacting to it before it gets any worse. This is the pyramid, attendance pyramid that was built 3 years ago. Basically, everything in that pyramid is our protocols that we developed 2 years ago. Under Dr. Conway. She convened a committee with all the principals and key staff members, and this is what we came up with. So Vernon, as of 2 years now, we've been sending the letters at 3, 6, and 9 absences. We continue with the parent meetings, which has been very powerful, getting the parents in, talking to them, what are the root problems of why their children are not going to school. When the children do hit the chronic absenteeism level, that's when we step up the protocols. Myself, Nazi Ramos, who works in the K through 5 schools, will go out and do home visits if the parents aren't connecting with us. At the high school level, where it is a major issue with attendance, we have now developed an attendance intervention group, which meets weekly with all the guidance counselors, the administrators, the social workers, the psychologists, and we get together and we talk about these particular students and what their problems are so we can get them the help that they need, even if it's outside the school. One of the other things that we developed this year was the SARB, which is the Student Attendance Review Board. We knew that there was issues at the high school, so we formulated this board, which is made up of community members, administrators, myself, and what we do is when a child hits that chronic absenteeism level or truancy, before we send them to court or before we call DCF, we put them through this SARB board. And we address it with the parents, what's going on, and we actually, we try to work with them, especially with outside services, which mainly most of them really need. So that's been successful this year, and we hope to continue that next year. This is a picture of myself and Ozzy at Vernon National Night Out. That was last August. We plan on doing it again this year. We were giving away pamphlets about the importance of attendance to parents. We were giving away alarm clocks and school supplies just to make that connection with the community. And we include this community screen because the community is so important when it comes to dealing with the absenteeism problem. We actually bring people in from KidSafe Connecticut into the middle school where she counsels some of our kids that have some chronic absenteeism problems and some social issues in the school. And the same with Ozzy, who's in our K through 5 school, still working there and doing a great job. And at the high school level, we have Kim and Ty also from Vernon Youth Services, who just provides that extra peer support for our kids with issues. This is the first set of data is, I've been doing this since I first started. This is the absence on excuse project that we're just doing at Vernon Center Middle School. As you can see in 2009, 2010, that was the year before you guys created this position. You can see how many absent on excuse there was. It started dipping dramatically in 2011, 2012. We see a rise in 2012-13 that was based on the new attendance laws that stated now that children have to have a doctor's note after 9. That's why it rose up a little bit. We expected that. And then this year it came back down. So just another indicator that we are having that constant parental involvement, and we're driving those unexcused absences down so the kids don't hit that truancy stage. Another data point is the chronic absenteeism. I talked about that. You can see before I started the position, there was 83 chronically absent kids at VCMS. We cut it by 50%, and this year at an all-time low of only 25 kids who have chronic absenteeism issues at VCMS. And truancies remaining stable at around 13 kids per year. This is the overall attendance percentage that we measure monthly. The state goal is 95% average daily attendance. And you can see the constant rise at VCMS. We hit an all-time high of 96.3 this year, which is Dr. Conway's goal of 96%. So, I mean, just another indicator that our attendance policies are really working. This is a snapshot of our K through 5 school, our middle school, and our high school. Again, showing how we are making a difference with chronic absenteeism. And even at the high school, finally, we're putting a dent in those absences with those kids, with the amount of effort that we're putting in with the attendance intervention groups and the SARB, the Student Attendance Review Board. So we're really concentrating on the 9th graders, just so you know. That's that transition year where the children are having major problems adjusting to the rigors of high school. So we really concentrate a lot on the 9th graders. And this is the last screen is our monthly average daily attendance in all of our schools. Anything that you see here in white means that those data points aren't meeting the state goal of 95%, and everything in yellow shows that we are meeting the state goals. There's 466 data points if you add them all together, and over the past 2 years, we've been filling this in, per se, with a 95% goal. I think this year we filled in 42 more data points. So even our average daily attendance overall in the district has improved dramatically. And that's all I have for you. Are there any questions from any of the board members or Dr. Conway?
Thank you very much. Obviously what you're doing is working.
Thank you. It's really a community effort. I just want to point that out with all our administrators and our guidance counselors too. Thank you.
So much. Okay, we'll move on to item 5.2, Facilities Committee Report. Mrs. Bush?
Yes, the facility committee met on June 18th, and there were 3 items on the agenda. The first one was using natural gas for heating. They are looking at putting natural gas in at Skinner, Rockland High School, and Maple. The cost to connect the boilers per building would be about $25,000. But we would definitely make that up in cost savings. The lines would be laid by the Yankee Gas, and we need to commit to a 15-year. But in that time period, we do not have to stick with Yankee Gas. We can go to other vendors for the product. The cost for having to replace the boilers would far exceed the amount that we would put towards changing the boilers over, is what we discussed. I wasn't sure if we needed a motion on that or just information, if I remember correctly.
Mr. Blues, have you a motion on it?
No,
Or is it
it's just
done deal?
It's just information, that's all.
Committee, like I said.
The second thing we talked about was a proposed mural in the Center Road School Library Media Center. In your packet, you received a sketch of what it was to look like. It would be approximately 12 foot wide and 6 foot 9 inches high. We made sure there would be no religious symbolism. There's a memorial fund that will be paying an artist to do the drawing, the mural. The idea is to let the students see the work in progress. So they're hoping to do it during school so that the students can see. So it would start in the fall and be a process that would go through time to have it completed. And the facility committee voted to approve this. So it does not need full board action. And the third item, it was about looking into getting the air conditioner in the library, and it did not pan out that we could get the used equipment. So that was something we were just made aware of.
Which library are you talking about?
At the Center Road School Media Center. And that was basically it.
Mr. Kemp?
Was there any discussion of the vacancy of the Salvation Army building?
No, there was not.
Okay. We're all aware that the Salvation Army either moved or is moving.
It has been done.
And there was a time that that Maple Street used to park over there, and then they shut it off for whatever reason, I'm not sure what, but now that they're gone, there may be an opportunity that we might want to consider, whether it's we, the town, or whatever, to do any number of things. Park there, have the town buy it, tear it down, do something with it. I'm not sure.
For you, Mrs. Fisher? The day that they moved and had their grand opening, the mayor's executive assistant emailed me immediately after the grand opening to say that the Salvation Army was actually interested in relieving themselves of the Union Street property. And so she did ask, would we be interested? Of course, we don't purchase anything as a board, it would be the town. And my response was, yes, very interested in exploring that. However, in the meantime, can we just use it for parking? And I did not get a response. So if the board wanted to ask me to put that in writing, to ask, you know, if there's been any
To ask
talk
who,
about
who
that.
would you ask? You'd
I would
the
ask the mayor, because the town, we can't purchase property, it would be the
No, but you
the
could
mayor.
ask the Salvation Army, can we park there now?
Right now, I'd give that a shot. They have everything locked up. Their gates are all locked up, so right now we can't get into the parking lot.
Right,
But-
but that was then, this is now. And, you know, the town argument wouldn't be, well, we'll take something out off the tax rolls if we bought it, because they're already tax exempt. So there's no negative impact if the town picked it up, as far as I can tell. I don't know what other issues there are with regard to the property, but I'm sure the Salvation Army would like to not have to cover liability on it, because they must have to. If somebody falls down, hurts themselves, they still own it. And so wouldn't they want to get rid of it? I don't know, it just seems like a discussion to have with either the Salvation Army or the town, or both.
Mr. Holt?
Well, Mr. Kemp, I was going to go there. I was going to say, I think we should pursue both. I think starting with the town and having the town manager approach Salvation Army and see what options we may have available to us, whether or not we can come with some type of an agreement as to use the parking facility or the parking areas there. But I would imagine the biggest catch would be insurance. To your point, they're going to have to pay some type of insurance or liability on that property, and if we put vehicles on that, now we're introducing additional liability to them potentially. So I would say we should pursue it through the town manager, have Dr. Conway contact them, to see what arrangements we might be able to make, and if it's something that the town would be willing to pursue purchasing the property for a parking facility for that school, that would be ideal. But, I don't know that the town has necessarily got that appetite, but we should at least inquire. So
Get people talking.
I'd put that in the form of a motion, that we pursue with the town administrator, options, and see if they would approach Salvation Army on what they may be willing to do with the town of Vernon on use of that property, or purchase, whatever town sees in our best interest. And I can't say what that is. I mean, I just know that the parking's been an issue over there for a long time.
Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
Any other discussion or comments? All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Getting back to the facilities committee meeting, there are 2 buildings at the high school, BOE and then the main structure. Correct? So
That's correct. So when we're saying $25,000 per building, we have to realize that the 2 buildings at Rockville High School would be,
yeah,
$50,000.
just for the minutes. So.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. It's 100,000?
Total.
The 4 buildings, okay. Got it. Mr. Hill?
And I had a question about that. Are any of those buildings currently set up with dual fuel burners?
They are not.
They are not, okay. Because I know when we did the school building project, we were looking at alternatives, and I think the reason why we didn't look at the high school is because they don't have gas really close. They have to bring in quite a distance to get it to the high school.
The buildings that do have gas do have the multiple, the dual fuel burners, excluding Lake Street because they don't have oil. But, so the ones that do have the options have the dual fuel burners now.
Would we be considering doing dual fuel, or is it strictly gas and that's it? And is that what we'd be obligating ourselves to for that 15 years, is to strictly use gas?
Yes. Yeah. You can buy it from a third-party vendor. Doesn't have to come from Yankee Gas, but we would have to burn gas for 15 years. The oil tank lifespans at most of the buildings are coming due. The high school is the only building that we would, consider putting in dual fuel burners now because those oil tanks are in very good shape and they're relatively new. So we would still have the option, and they're good tanks. Their lifespan is much longer than the fiberglass that were lined and above ground. So right now, for the Maple Street conversion and for Skinner Road conversion, I believe we're going to go just straight gas, but the high school would do dual fuel.
Any questions? Thank you very much for that clarification. Okay, anything else on the facilities committee report? No? Mr. Paulson, do you have anything else for us?
I'm all set.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, 5.2A is a donation from Travelers. So, anyone make a motion? Mr. Wu?
Make the motion that the Vernon Board of Education accept with gratitude the donation of $240 from the Travelers Employee Giving Matching Gift Program to Rockville High School to be used for student-related activities and initiatives.
Is there a second? Mrs. Bush?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Concerns? All those in favor? Unanimous. 5.2A, B, the marching band instructor positions. Mrs. Bush?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that the Vernon Board of Education accept with gratitude the donation of $8,000 to $9,000 from the Rockville High School Marching Band Booster Club to pay for the salaries of woodwind instructor, brass instructor, and 2 percussion instructors.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Lincoln? Any questions or comments? Mr. Gould?
Are these positions that we currently have within the school, or how is this, where is this position coming from that we're funding through Booster?
If I may, thank you, Mrs. Fisher. The forever, the band boosters have been hiring particular people to fulfill roles that they feel necessary and that Mr. Davis feels necessary. Mr. Picaro has been tightening up very much how we accept, as you just saw, you just accepted a donation, so making sure that the board sees all of these things. The band boosters are not employers. They don't have employee identification numbers and things like that. So in order for these people to actually be paid legally with Social Security taken out and employment taxes and things like that, then it has to go through our payroll. So this is a donation that certainly should have been asked a year ago prior to these people doing this work, but that's the way they've been doing business all the time, so they didn't realize that this wasn't the way to go. So they now know going forward that if they're going to raise money, then the board has to approve that prior to the activity.
Okay, so I would assume they go through all the regular employment background checks because they're working with our kids, et cetera?
Well, we always consider them volunteers because they're not our employees, so they do go through those background checks, right?
Thank you.
So is the Booster Club then giving the money to the board and then the board pays these people? Is that correct? All right, any other questions on this, Mr. Kemp?
Okay, so these have been in place, so the concern that we expressed earlier tonight about another position and subsequent funding really is somewhat moot because there's a history where they have funded it time after time.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion on the floor? It's unanimous. Okay, 5.4, teacher evaluation. Dr. Conway.
Thank you. I'm pleased to report that all teacher evaluations were concluded with their conferences all by June 1st. The administration has until June 30th to get it into Bloom Board, and I don't know if you've ever sat in front of a computer and watched the little wheel spin, but that's what we're all going through. So, so we are doing it so far as of Friday at noon. We had 134 teachers who were counted as proficient, 82 who were counted as exemplary. So we're still about, that's probably about half of them, 200, no, that's probably about 2/3 of them. So the rest of the, I know the high school is doing all of theirs this week in the computer. So everyone has met, everyone has received their evaluation, all administrators as well, so this includes administrators. And just they're not all into the computer yet, so we have till June 30th to get that done, so by next Monday. We're going nuts.
So you're saying the administrators have been done also?
Yes, yes, but they're not all on the computer, but the administrators, every administrator has been met with and had their evaluation done. All non-certs have been done, and they're all on paper.
Any questions, Mr. Kemp?
Okay, 134 proficient, 87 exemplary. Any other categories?
The other categories right now are 0, and those are below standard and developing. In our current system, which is the state seed model, if I can elaborate a little bit, it is exceptionally difficult to receive anything below proficient. Everything rounds up. So even teachers who were not asked back this year still receive ratings of proficient.
Really?
And so Vernon has, you approved it a month or so ago, a new model for next year. And so where we're looking at if you receive a developing in either of the two domains that have to do with teaching, classroom management and the instruction piece, then you would be put on appraisal for the following year. And so our standard is much higher to achieve, and there's no rounding up. So
is that state requirement that it round up? Is that our requirement?
that was the state model, and we adopted the state model for the first year. And so over the course of the year, because it's now annually, we used to have to do it every 10 years or so, put in a new teacher evaluation model. And so now it's annually that you have to renew your teacher evaluation model. And we knew this last year. We said, all right, we'll do the state model for 1 year, see how it goes, and see what we want to tweak going forward.
What does the state want to tweak?
They have not made any changes or many changes to the teacher model right now. They went
You know when the data rolls out and the statewide data reveals that there's 0
correct.
and 0.
It will be very interesting because we have to report that data by the 30th as well. Actually,
We do
not,
and everybody else does.
we have to report the number of teachers on that date. We don't have to report which bucket they fall into because you can change that for September 15th.
But who's seriously going to take this evaluation process with any credibility if the results statewide are 0, 0, 2/3 and 1/3? I mean, it's almost statistically impossible.
Correct.
And from a perspective of a citizen, that nobody be developing, nobody.
And you expect some of your non-tenured teachers, that's what they are, is
You
developing.
could almost argue, the 0 in the first one, but that nobody's developing, I mean, it's not good.
And that's why Vernon has changed. We couldn't live with that. When we realized what was happening over the course of the year, that it was impossible virtually impossible to
Are
be
you
below.
done with your
proficient.
evaluations for
We
this?
are done with, we're not done with getting them in the computer, but everyone has met, had a conference and the year-end
So
evaluation.
there are no other numbers to change, it's just,
Yes, these will change as they finish going into the computer. This was a computer printout that I had Jeff do on Friday.
so it's not that you just haven't entered the Ds yet, there aren't going to be any.
Oh, no, there could be. We still have probably 100 teachers to enter input, and more could have been done on Friday.
I see, okay, although it doesn't bode well, does it? It depends on how you look at it, I realize, but I have to say that that's just not acceptable.
We agree.
I mean, good heavens. So anyway, tell me about the administrators. Have their evaluations been done?
They're still not all on the computer yet, but yes,
What are
many
the
of them
results
are.
there?
Well, they have the same rubric. So,
Yeah, but you said 134.87.
right, and they're in there. They would have the same rubric, so not rubric, but same metric where everything rounds up because we use the seed model for them as well.
So what are the results?
Most all are proficient. I didn't give any exemplars.
Okay.
There's no one developing or below standard that you know.
Only because of the way the model is.
Right.
So that's not to say that some people didn't get developing. I certainly did that for with several administrators on several indicators, several domains,
Right, good.
but it all rounds up.
You see the problem.
Oh, yes. That's why we tried to do it. I'm part of a work group along with Mrs. Buell and Mrs. Simon that meets tomorrow. We've met, this is the 4th time we've met, working on a new administrator evaluation plan for the state. So the state is listening. They come and they sit and they listen. This came from superintendents because we couldn't stand it. There's 7 districts working on this.
You know what's really, I didn't realize this. Everybody in the profession is going to say to themselves, whatever, I'm going to end up being proficient no matter what. That's just terrible. And maybe I'll end up exceptional or whatever. But, even among themselves, they know there are people that don't really deserve to be proficient anymore. Maybe they were once, but they're not anymore, or maybe they never were. And they'll see the same data we will, and they'll say, my goodness, all this hubbub about evaluating everybody and being fair and all this other, raising the bar, and that's what we end up with.
One more,
Please.
The teachers union is working very closely with Mr. Burt and is in complete agreement on the revisions that we wish to make.
there's a teacher committee that's professional development and teacher evaluation, but they spent all their time on teacher evaluation this year. And they worked with Mr. Burt to create this, and the union is on board as well with the new one that we're hoping we will get approval of from the state. We don't know, but we're hoping.
Has that been submitted to the state?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you. Any other questions?
This will be, again, because the date for reporting has now changed to September, and because it changes on July 1, you'll also receive a report in September. This will be the year you receive 2 reports on the same year, but all the numbers will be complete by now.
Okay, item 5.5, reports from board and liaisons regarding attendance at organization committee meetings. Anybody have anything to report? Mrs. Bush?
I have 2 items. I attended the Northeast School PTO meeting. What the main thing, besides closing out the year and voting in new officers, the biggest part of the discussion was making sure that they're reaching out to their community, their school community, to get more participation of the families. And they were strategizing different ways that they could go about doing that. And they came up with some really good ideas, hopefully a lot of like meet and greets and maybe a dinner, things like that. And I think it's really important that families do realize that the PTOs are a very important part of that school, and to support them as much as they can come out. And it seems like a lot of the same people are doing most of the work. So I encourage the public to please get out and support their PTOs and help out as much as possible in all areas. Second thing, today I attended a focus group for the Department of Children and Families on the issue of behavioral health planning. They're going to be, and you each got one of these emerging themes sheets. We sat with DCF representatives that are going to be compiling the plan in the future. And many of the things that Vernon is looking at, many of the districts around the school or around the state are looking at, they really need to make sure that there is enough help in the schools, that they have psychologists and they have social workers in place in the schools. They're also looking to make sure that all the different community organizations are communicating with each other so that nobody's reinventing the wheel every time they work with a child or a family. Another thing that they're looking at is how the funding will work. And something that we discussed is making sure none of these things are coming through as unfunded mandates. And what we're hoping it comes out as non-competitive grants that schools can apply for their needs, and not just told you do this and figure out where the money is. And not every school has the same needs. So they would be grants, hopefully, if this plan all works out and comes together. There's going to be a meeting and kind of like a rollout of the plan. And that's going to be on July 24th at the legislative building. I think it's in room 2E. And they're going to give an overview of what their findings are and how the plan will work. You're welcome to go. They're looking, they're going to have people testifying and things like that. I think it's a very important thing that the state is going to put in place a plan so that we know where everybody is and everybody's on the same page for the mental health issues.
Anybody have any questions for her? Anybody have anything else to report? Okay. I just want to say that the adult ed graduation and Rockville High's graduation were really wonderful ceremonies. Very well done, and beautiful night for Rockville High's graduation. And the gauntlet that the kids went through with the teachers was really awesome. Very cool. Okay, and now it's time to, how about we do, is it all right if we move to 6.0? Oh no, we have to come back after. But there will be decisions on these executive session things. So I need a motion to go into executive session for 5.6, 5.7, 5.8, 5.9. Invite new superintendent.
Motion. Motion to go into executive session and invite the superintendent.
And Mrs. Bush, second. All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, we are out of executive session and we have item 5.6, ratification of cafeteria workers' contract. Mr. Gould.
Make the motion that the Vernon Board of Education approve the Cafeteria Worker United Food and Commercial Worker Union Local 919 AFL-CIO contract for July 1st, 2014 through June 30, 2017, pending union ratification.
Is there a second, Mr. Kemp? Any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, memo of understanding. Mrs. Bush?
I'd like to make a motion that the Vernon Board of Education approve the memo of understanding between the Vernon School Administrators Association and the board as presented.
Is there a second? Mr. Gould?
Second.
Questions, comments? All those in favor? Unanimous. And now we have item 5.8, non-affiliated contracts. Mr. Gould.
Make the motion that the board approve the non-affiliate contracts as discussed.
Is there a second? Mr. Linton? Any concerns, questions, comments? All those in favor? It's unanimous. There is no action on the superintendent's evaluation 5.9. So now we're on item 6.0 to review and update the Board of Education calendar. I assume we don't have anything to review or update. Item 7.0, opportunity for questions from the press, and they are not here. So our last motion is,
Michelle's talking to the press now.
would someone like to make a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? Mrs. Bush? All those in favor? It's unanimous.
9:01.
9:03 according to this.
That was, Mrs. Bush was the second.
No.
School and Bush are adjourned.